There is a difference between a story told from the outside and a story told from within. From the outside, you see fragments, reports, videos, statements, pieces of information that don't quite connect. But from the inside, the picture is different. Not necessarily clearer, but closer. Because the people inside the system don't just observe it, they operate within it. They understand its rules, its limits, its boundaries. And sometimes they reach a point where they decide they can't stay silent anymore. That's where whistleblowers come in, not as proof, not as confirmation, but as signals. Signals that something inside the system is under pressure. So tonight, we're not asking, are whistleblowers telling the truth? We're asking something far more important. Why are insiders coming forward now? And why does it keep happening? Welcome back to UFO to UAP The Disclosure Report. I am your host, Matt Tones. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe on Spotify, share the episode, and today's title is The Whistleblower Pattern: Why Insiders Keep Coming Forward. When something repeats, it stops being about individuals and starts being about the system. A whistleblower is often misunderstood. They're not random voices. They're not outsiders. They're not disconnected observers. They are people with proximity to information, people who have worked inside government, intelligence, military systems, and who at some point decide to speak. But here's the key detail. A whistleblower doesn't exist to prove something. They exist to introduce pressure into a system. Because once a claim is made publicly, the system is forced to respond, not necessarily with answers, but with process. To understand whistleblowers, you have to understand the system they come from, because this is not an open environment. It is built on classification, compartmentalisation, restricted access. Information is divided. No single person sees everything. Access is granted based on need to know, which means even insiders operate with incomplete information. So when someone comes forward, they're not revealing the full picture, they're revealing their part of it. And that matters, because before we understand why people speak, we need to understand why they don't. The system is designed to discourage disclosure. Speaking out carries risk. Career risk, reputational risk, legal risk, and beyond that, there's something less visible. Stigma, the fear of being dismissed, ignored, or discredited. So most people inside the system remain silent, even when they have questions, even when they have concerns. Historically, there have always been individuals who spoke out, but they were isolated, disconnected, easy to dismiss, because the system could absorb them, treat them as anomalies, and move on. But something changed. Now we're seeing multiple insiders emerge within a short period of time. People like David Grusch, Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, different roles, different access points, but similar themes. And that changes the equation, because this is no longer isolated, it's structured, and that makes it harder to ignore. So the question becomes, why now? Why are insiders coming forward at this moment? The first reason is that the system has reopened the question. UAP research has returned. Programs exist again. Data is being collected. And once the system begins looking again, pressure increases internally. The second reason is data. The system is now encountering persistent anomalies, not one-off events, but patterns, repeated observations that don't fully resolve, and that creates tension. The third reason is internal disagreement. Different parts of the system do not see the same picture. They don't interpret the data the same way, and they don't agree on how to respond. And when systems lack alignment, pressure builds, and pressure finds a way out through people. Even now, speaking out isn't easy. Whistleblowers face scrutiny, they face skepticism, they face investigation. But something has changed. They now have channels, legal pathways, structured ways to present claims, and that tells us something important. The system is allowing pressure to be released in a controlled way. When a whistleblower speaks, the system responds in a predictable way, not with confirmation, not with denial, but with process. Investigations, statements, reviews. This allows the system to maintain control while still acknowledging that the claim exists. Now we reach something critical, because at this point, a pattern becomes visible. This is not random, it is repeatable. Insiders come forward, claims are introduced, the system responds with process, and the question remains open. When a claim enters the system, it becomes something else. Not truth, not fiction, but a problem to be processed. And the system doesn't operate on belief, it operates on procedure. So claims are logged, reviewed, assessed, but not necessarily resolved. This is where people get confused because credibility is not proof. A whistleblower can be credible, qualified, experienced, and still not provide definitive evidence because of the system itself. Information is compartmentalized, access is restricted, and even insiders only see part of the picture. So what they provide are signals, not full answers, and those signals are shaped by legal constraints, by classification, and what they are allowed to say, which means what reaches the public is not the full claim. It is the claim that can be safely made, and that creates a gap between what is known and what is said. The system responds internally, while the public reacts externally. The public asks, is this true? Is this disclosure? Is this confirmation? But the system is asking something different. What risk does this claim create? And how do we manage it? Because the claim itself can be a threat, not because of what it proves, but because of what it introduces: uncertainty. As more insiders come forward, that pattern becomes harder to ignore. Not identical claims, but consistent themes, unexplained phenomena, restricted information, national security framing, and consistency is more powerful than any single statement because it suggests structure. At this point, we begin to see something deeper, not just claims, but tension inside the system. Different groups, different data, different interpretations, no single unified position. And when that happens, pressure builds. So why doesn't the system simply confirm or deny? Because it can't. Confirmation creates consequences. Denial may contradict internal data. So instead, the system chooses something else: controlled ambiguity. Enough information to acknowledge the issue, but not enough to define it. And that ambiguity is not a flaw, it is a strategy. Now, we step back because what we're seeing is not just individuals speaking out, it is a system under pressure. Pressure created by data that doesn't resolve, internal disagreement, and external attention. And when pressure builds, it doesn't stay contained. It emerges through people, through claims, through moments like this. Whistleblowers are not proof, they are signals. Signals that something inside the system is unresolved. They don't tell us what is happening in the sky, they tell us what is happening inside the system. And right now, that system is processing, adapting, responding, but not resolving, because the question is still open. As long as it remains open, the pattern will continue. More voices, more claims, more process, and no final answer. Because in the end, this was never just about UFOs or hidden programs or extraordinary claims. It is a story about pressure and what happens when that pressure can no longer be contained. This is UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm Matt Tones, and I'd like to leave you with just one last thought. Sometimes the most important signal is not what is being revealed, but why it's being revealed now. Please share, please subscribe, and tell your mum about this episode.